All right. I'm not sure. Some technical difficulties. So let's see. What's up, man? Bear with me for a second. Let me figure out why am I getting heard. Can you guys hear me okay? Everybody hear me okay? It's been a minute. Let's see. There we go. All right. So I'm not really sure what's going on with my sound. If you guys can hear me okay, then we should be good. All right, check. Check. There we go. All right. I'm getting feedback there. It's crazy. Like two different. So StreamYard did some updates that I'm not really familiar with. So I'm not sure why I'm hearing my reverb back. You might check. All right. Still happening. Anyway, what's up, man? So listen, we're gonna jump right into it. I know it's been a week or two since we last had a conversation about Africans in America. Peace and love. Peace and love. Now, I just want to make sure that the sound is not reverbing, meaning it's looping on you guys' end, or you can hear like an echo in the background on y'all end, because I can definitely hear it on my end. It's like doing something weird, some weird echoey type shit. All right. So last time we talked, we was kind of dealing with the Africans in America, and I want to continue that conversation. If you guys don't mind, I've been doing some more research. Hold on. There we go. Check. There we go. All right, figured it out. All right, cool. We here. All right. I had StreamYard on twice. What's good? What's good, brother? What's good? Peace and love, peace and light, man. Peace and light, man. Peace to everybody, peace to the planet. Listen, do me a favor, go ahead and hit that goddamn share button. And let's get our numbers up real quick. But last time we spoke on Africans in America. And if you guys remember, I was sharing information about these Angolans who are from Africa in the Americas. And one particular person that I wanted to focus on was Anthony Johnson. I think everybody should know who Anthony Johnson is. Just for a quick recap, I want to spend the first 10 minutes or so, or 15 minutes maybe, doing a recap from last week. And I won't be able to recap everything because I don't even remember what all we fucking covered last week or 2 weeks ago. But a quick recap. We're focusing on Africans in America. And the point, what's the point of this? The point is to show you guys that the ideology of African Americans, first of all, it's a farce, it's a fallacy, and it's a fake. A force, a fallacy, and it's a fake. And fuck it, right? So the idea that every person of color in the North American continent are supposedly from Africa, bullcrap. What's up, Chris? Peace and love. Go hit that share button, y'all. Y'all know what time it is. We're gonna be on here for at least a good hour or maybe 2 hours. So if you're just tapping in, you haven't missed nothing, not yet. But we about to go there. So again, I guess the point, not I guess, but the point I'm trying to make with this whole live is to show you guys that the idea of African Americans is bullshit. First of all, just plain and simple, ain't no way around it. It's BS. It's straight baloney. All right. African Americans was a made up title. Matter of fact, let's look into it real quick because we ain't got nothing but time. Let's see. Let me pull up my search bar real quick. 1 second, fam. We're gonna get to it. And yeah, we jumping right the fuck in. Like we ain't wasting no time at all. We're gonna go ahead and jump right in this shit. The term African American was a term coined by Jesse Jackson in the 1980s. All right. All right, let's see what AI overview says. It says, while Jesse Jackson popularized the term African American in the 1980s, he did not coin it. The term was used much earlier, with its early known mentions appearing in 1782. So you got your pen and your paper, write down 1782. African American, the term appears. We're gonna do some digging on where it appeared at. Though its rise to prominence is linked to community leaders like Jesse Jackson, who sought to establish cultural and historical context for people of African descent in the U.S. Jackson in 1988 announced that the community preferred to be called African Americans, emphasizing the connection to cultural identity with ancestral history. This is when the bullcrap started right here. This is when it started, pretty much. Early usage in 1782, however, dates back. It says appearing in the pamphlet called A Sermon on Captured of Lloyd Cornwallis. And of course, we about to look this shit up because I never heard of that. Okay, there. This okay. Let's go. We're looking for a specific term. Here we go. A sermon. So first of all, I want to bring to you guys' attention. We're talking about 1782, right? 1782. Peace, everybody. Peace, everybody's coming into the chat, y'all. Peace and love, peace and light. What's going on, fam? What's going on, fam? Peace to y'all, man. Hit that damn share button, man. We about to go up. We about to turn up on this shit. Y'all already know what time it is, man. Grab your pen and paper, take notes. If you guys just tapped in, we probably about maybe a good 10 minutes, maybe 8 minutes in. I'm just doing a recap. We're talking about Africans in America, not African Americans, because African Americans is not a real thing. It's what they call a misnomer. Okay, it's a misnomer, meaning that shit is pseudoscience. However, the sermon by African Americans in 1782. Now, I want to show you guys something that's also should be noted around the 1780s. We're going to come right back to that. It said sermon in 1782. The First Great Awakening. And this is something that I often speak about on Chrome TV is the Great Awakenings. So we're still dealing with the 1782 African American term, which was used in the sermon. But I want to back up a little bit before 1782 and deal with the 1730s to 1770s and show you guys what was going on in America at this time. This is a period called the First Great Awakening. First Great Awakenings. So write that down, because I think the Third Great Awakening becomes very popular in the latter 1800s, early 1900s. This is when you see the Moorish Science Temple, the Seventh-day Adventists, and all the other religious groups explode in America in the early 1900s. But earlier on, this is probably, and I haven't read this yet, but this is probably dealing with the early Christian secular communities of the Protestants, which we know William Penn, Quakers, the Brownists, Quakers, Brownists, Protestants. It was like two other groups, the Calvinists, they came over here. And this was a religious pilgrimage, which identified them as pilgrims because they made, in Islam, it's called Hajj. They made a holy journey. In this case, what happened, and we can go back further, but just trust me, I'm going to talk you through it so we ain't got to do a whole lot of research back. But what's happening in the early colonial periods in the 1600s, you have the Virginia colonies, which is settled by King James, or granted by King James. You have the lower colonies, which are the Carolina colonies, which was granted by way of Charles II through what was called Lord Proprietors. He assigned, I think, 5 or 6 Lord Proprietors over that land in South and North Carolina. In fact, it wasn't even South North Carolina. It was just the Carolinas at that time. And the Lord Proprietors became perpetual owners throughout their lifetime and generations to come. That means all the acreage in the Carolinas belong to these Lord Proprietors, even still in perpetuity. Then the reason Charles give these individuals to Lord Proprietors, and I can show you that information, this land, because these 5 or 6 gentlemen were very loyal throughout the time that King Charles' father was murdered, and Cromwell took over. I think talked about Cromwell a little bit earlier in one of his lectures, but Cromwell took over, and King Charles II reclaimed the throne and granted those 5 loyalists Lord Proprietors over the Carolina colonies. then going down into the territory of Georgia, right below the Carolinas. And if you can imagine in your mind right now a map of the eastern seaboard, from New England, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, New Hampshire. There's an old Hampshire in Europe. Newark, there is a old Newark in England. New York, there is a old York in England also. New Amsterdam, there is a old Amsterdam in New York. I'm sorry, in England also, and so on and so forth. New Jersey, whatever the word new is in front of, there's an old version of that over in England. So the whole entire eastern seaboard from Maine, Maine all the way down through Rhode Island, Boston, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Carolina down to Georgia. Now, Georgia, however, Georgia is set up as what's called a penal colony, and we'll get to the penal colony in a second. In fact, because we're still in the 1700s right now, this is 1730. We're going to go ahead and take a look at Georgia next. We're going to find out when Georgia was established, a year. These dates become very important. You have to understand the dates, family. You have to understand what's called time and space. Once you're able to understand time and space, when something happened and where it happened, when and where it happened. Okay, so the 1700s. Let's read on real quick about the First Great Awakening, then we'll go back to the African American part. The First Great Awakening was a series. It means it were several movements, just like the Pan-African movement, the Nation of Islam movement, the Moorish Science Temple movement. These are a series of movements in the early colonies. The First Great Awakening was a series of religious revivals that swept through the American colonies between 1730 and 1770, characterized by emotional, personal religious experiences and charismatic preaching, notable by figures like George Whitefield and Jonathan Edwards. This movement emphasized spiritual conviction over rationalism, fostered a greater sense of individual spiritual responsibility, and challenged established religious heresy in its long-term impact, including the birth of dominionship like baptism, increased religious tolerance, the creation of a new college like Princeton and Brown, in the development of sentiments and contribute to the American Revolution by promoting individualism, questioning authority. There's some key characteristics of it. The charismatic preaching part, this right here, the charismatic preaching part. This became very dominant in later Black Baptist churches. When the and God, that's charismatic preaching. That's also called Phariseizing or embellishing. That's a particular tactic that religious leaders will use and was later taught to Black preachers and pastors by way of one. Let's take a look at real quick. Father Divine. This is Father Divine. Now, Father Divine is going to come in what's called the Third Great Awakening. The Third Great Awakening. 1907 was the Third Great Awakening. Let's take a look at Father Divine real quick. We're talking about the Great Awakenings. And the reason we're talking about the Great Awakenings is because the term African American will come out of a sermon in the early 1780s. This is Father Divine. He was an American spiritual leader from about 1907 to his death in 1965. We're talking about charismatic preaching. His full self-given name was Reverend Major Jealous Divine. He is known as the messenger. This is before the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. This is before Fard Muhammad. This is before Timothy Drew. Before. This guy came before them. However, they will take their marks from him, as we will see here in a second. He founded the International Peace Mission Movement, formed its doctrine, and oversaw its growth from a small, predominant black congregation to a multiracial and international church. Many consider him to be a cult leader since he claimed to be God. Prior to 1912, the early life and original name, little is known about Father Divine's early life, and even his real name, his real given name, Father Divine and Peace Movement, he started, did not keep many records. Father Divine declined several offers to write his biography, saying that the history of God would not be useful in mortal terms. Of course, the FBI looking to this guy because he is a threat. Father Divine childhood remained a continuous point. Some, especially early researchers, suppose that he was born in the Deep South, most likely in Georgia, as the son of a sharecropper, not slave. Sharecropper. See? Look at this picture. You see that picture? These are sharecroppers, not slaves. If this was a black and white photo, you would think that they were slaves. These are sharecroppers and tenant farmers. We'll talk about that also at some point. These were free people of color who already had their land. Now, these people right here were probably of the first, wait a minute, one, two, three, third or third generation of African landowners. African landowners. I want you guys to write that down. Write down the word African landowners. I'm taking notes as well. African landowners. Jill Watts, based on the census, blah, blah, blah. Most researchers agree that Father Divine parents were freed black slaves. That's a fucking conundrum. How can you be free and slaves at the same time? This is the language game they play with you guys. This is the language game that they will play. Peace and love, Rick. What's going on? Peace and light, brother. This is the word game they'll play. How the hell are you free and a slave at the same time? Doesn't make sense, do it? It doesn't make sense because it doesn't make sense. Peace and love. Wait, what brother say? Facts. My dad told me someone already tried. Oh yeah, they did. They did. And I'm gonna show you where it comes from so we can break this spell of being called African Americans. Record keeping about this generation of African Americans was notoriously poor. So conservative controversy about his upbringing is not likely to be resolved. On the other hand, he had his first wife, Penella, I think his name is, claimed that they were married June 6, 1882. This date appears to have a spiritual meaning rather than a literal one. Father Divine was probably called George Baker around the turn of the century. He worked as a gardener in Baltimore, Maryland. In 1906, a trip to California, Father Divine became acquainted with the ideas of Charles Fillmore. Charles Fillmore was an American religious leader who founded Unity, a church within New Thought movement, with his wife Myrtle Page Fillmore in 1889. He became known as an American mystic for his contributions to spiritual interpretations of the Bible. This is Charles Fillmore. We're talking about the Great Awakening. I'm going to go back in a second to the first Great Awakening of 1782 and talk about the sermon that gave you the term African American. This is how deep this shit is. We have to go deep. We can't do no shallow researching and reading. We have to definitely look into it, right? More about Father Divine. He says that he is the eternal Father, and you'll start to see this message. You're starting to see this message of these charismatic leaders being compared to the Most High. Later, you get the 5% nation, God Allah. You get Farad Muhammad. Is being said as Allah in person and Allah incarnate. Then you get people like Noble Drew Ali, who say he's a prophet. Some say he's more than a prophet. Moses, Jesus, so on and so forth. So this narrative has been going on for a long time about these charismatic leaders who tend to attract quite a following of people. In the late 20s, Father Divine became Morrison's first follower and adopted the pseudonym The Messenger. The Messenger. So it was not Elijah Muhammad. It was not Farad Muhammad who got the term the messenger. Those charismatic black leaders would appear a little bit later in the 20s and 30s and throughout the 40s, 60s, and 50s. I'm sorry, 40s, 50s, and 60s. They would appear a little bit later, but coining the same term, the messenger. The messenger was a Christ figure to Morrison's God the Father. Father Divine preached with Morrison in Baltimore out of the home of former evangelist Harriet Snowden, who became the first who came to accept their divinity. Morrison began calling himself Father Jehovah. This is out of the New Thought movement, what was later known as the Third Great Awakening. One more character real quick before we go. Sweet Daddy Grace was also another character who also rose to prominence in what was called the Third Great Awakening as well. And, you know, Sweet Daddy Grace would later go on to influence people like Timothy Drew, as we're going to see here in a second. Charles Manuel Sweet Daddy Grace, or Daddy Grace, was the founder who was the founder and first Baptist of predominantly African American denomination in the United States. Now, he was around the time of the 1800s, early 1900s, the dominant United States House of Prayer for All People. He was a contemporary of other religious leaders such as Father Divine, Noble Drew Ali, and Ernest Holmes. Many of his followers claimed miraculous acts of faith healing while attending service, and others saw his ministry as a sign from God of imminent return of Jesus Christ. This is Ernest Holmes, was an American New Thought writer, teacher, and leader. He was the founder of spiritual movement known as religious science, part of a greater New Thought movement whose spiritual philosophy is known as the science of the mind. There it is. Noble Drew Ali, Sweet Daddy Grace, Father Divine, so on and so forth. But this is known as the Third Great Awakening. Now we're going to go back to the First Great Awakening and learn about this term African American when it was first initially used in a sermon on the capture of Lord Cornwallis. Sermon by an African American, context, published in Philadelphia in 1782, with the author identifying as a African American. Earliest use of African American. This work contains the earliest known use of the term African American, predating the Oxford English Dictionary, earliest example by 50 years. A call for Black identity. The term reflects a movement when formerly enslaved people began to claim a distinct American identity separate from labels like African or Ethiopian. One more time. The term reflects a movement. The term reflects a movement, not a people, not a person, but a movement, because this is the First Great Awakening. Now, during the Second and Third Great Awakening, we're going to see other free thoughts come out of this situation. Right? So this is the First Great Awakening, and the term African American is being insinuated as a movement, not as a people. So later in the 1920s, when the Prophet Noble Drew Ali says terms like Negro, Black, and Colored were given to you by slaveholders in 1786 and lasted to about 1865. These are terms, misnomers. I don't think I have my PowerPoint on him, but I even talk about these terms. They're called exonyms. Exonyms. The term African American is a exonym. We'll go right back to this in a second. Hold on. What does exonym mean? Ah, man, not acronym. Exonym. An exonym is a name for a geographical place used by people outside that place, which is different from the name used by the inhabitants, which is called an endonym. So the term African American is known as what's called a exonym. That is a term given to a people from outsiders. You don't have to accept the term African American at all. You can create your own term to call yourselves, which is a endonym. That's a exonym. So we're not going to accept the exonym African American. Okay? Check. There we go. I think I lost my damn spot. The origin of African American. This is the origin of African American. Now, Jesse Jackson popularized the term in 1988, but he did not invent the term. So we have to stop giving Jesse so much damn credit. Okay? We can't give Jesse too much credit. It'd be like in our own community, though, for real. Minus the extra titles, we always have pastors that will believe his anointing, pray, he'll preach, message every. Of course, absolutely. In the Caribbean, it's crazy down there. So yeah, you're absolutely correct about that. The origin of African American, the term's earliest known appearance in print in the 18th century, 1700 sermon. This is an article, Yale Alumni Magazine, citing the source by Fred Safaro. January, February 2016. This is Lord Cornwallis by an African American. So this is the first time that this was noted in history. Okay, this is the actual book, the actual letter. Sorry, Lord Cornwallis. Now, what we could easily do, which we are going to do it, so don't you fucking worry about it. We're going to find out who Lord Cornwallis was, because if his title is Lord, then he's probably either of a certain aristocracy out of Europe. Lord, sire, squire, duke, earl, count. Those are titles of nobility by an African American. And we're going to find out who the African American was too. Then I'm going to take you right back to people like Anthony Johnson. We're going to talk about Angola. And then we're going to go over to Queen Nzinga to show you how she was shipping hundreds of thousands of Africans out of Africa by way of Portuguese trade as a what do you call it? When people join up together as an alliance to keep the Dutch off her ass. Then you're going to start seeing the Dutch and the Spaniards and the Portuguese. They're going to take strongholds on the international human trafficking known as the Atlantic slave trade, which has Nathaniel or Nathan or nothing to do with us here in the shores of North America. However, I will show you the slave trade that did and still does affect us to this day, which is known as the second Atlantic slave trade or domestic slave trade, which you hear nothing about. But they show you movies, all of the slave movies from Roots, Django, 12 Years a Slave, Roots the series, Roots the TV show, Roots rebooted. All those movies take place in the early to middle 1800s in North America, and none of those individuals come from Africa. They come from right here in North America. And we'll watch a clip. 12 Years a Slave. He was kidnapped from Washington, D.C., transported by riverboat, not on the ocean. Those are riverboats. Shouts out to Dane Calloway for putting people on game years ago about those are not ships. Those are called schooners. I can show you what a schooner is. I can show you what a frigate is also. Right? So let's move on. Oh, that was a huge slave trade. That was the Pacific slave trade. That's when when Spain took over the Philippines. That's when Spain took over the Philippines. Before Spain or the Spaniards got to Philippines, because Spain had took over Cuba and Philippines, which Cuba and Philippines were renegotiated under the treaty or after the Treaty of Paris. I forgot what the treaty was called. Post Treaty of Paris, when Spain had lost the entire eastern seaboard or southeast region of North America to Britain, everything but New Orleans or Louisiana. And then some kind of way, Spain reclaimed the territory of Florida. It was called Floridian. And Floridian went from Florida all the way up to Carolina, all the way over to Mississippi. That was Spanish territory. It belonged to Spain. The entire southeast region belonged to Spain, which we'll see here in a second when we deal with the colony of Guadalupe, which was the first African colony in the state of Georgia prior to 1619. We're talking about Hampton, Virginia, Fort Comfort, Virginia, which those 20 odd so individuals who were Angolans, they were from Angola, jacked by a privateer ship called the White Lion and the Treasurer. There were 300 and some odd Angolans. They captured 20 to 30 and traded them for food and supplies in Fort Comfort, Virginia. The ship that they were on was called the San Juan Batista. Then we can track back to San Juan Batista and go back even further and deal with the Nina de Pinta de Santa Maria and show you the Nino brothers, who were all black Moors. But we'll deal with it. We're going to deal with it. Don't you worry about it. We're only 30 minutes in. So this is Laura Cornwallis. Let's continue. Laura Cornwallis, the first time the term African American has been seen or used. It says the Oxford Dictionary, which is the standard dictionary that everybody uses out of Europe. The Oxford Dictionary traces its documented occurrence, of African American back as far as 1835. The related term Afro-American, write down Afro-American. That becomes very important because that's what you would originally call Afro-American. People with the big ass afros, which enjoyed a brief popularity in the 1960s. Why did we stop calling ourselves Afro-Americans in the 1960s? Because James Brown popularized a song called what? Say it loud. Say it loud. I'm proud. Say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud. Say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud. So Afro-American enjoyed a short popularized stint in America into the 1960s. Because in the 1960s, James Brown popularized the song, I'm black and I'm proud. Noble Drew Ali said, you are not black. You are not Negro. You're not colored. These were all terms given to you by slave holders, not slave catchers, slave holders. And it lasted until about 1865. The term of African American goes back to at least 1835, in some cases 1782. Come on now. And again, this is from Yale Alumni Magazine.org. I'm not making this shit up. I'm not making up nothing right now. I'm not Florigiizing or embellishing anything. I'm just pulling up the articles and we just sitting here reading it together. And I hope you guys are taking notes. Please take notes. Write down the dates. If we got to go back to making our T chart, let me know. We can make a T chart if we got to make a T chart. I'm not being facetious, but this is how you learn. There's nobody worth listening to if they're not showing you and walking you through the information. If they're not showing you and walking you through the information, there ain't no point to listen to them motherfuckers. I'm not here to entertain you and make all kind of noises and sounds effects. I'm showing you guys pure, unadulterated information. This is just information. I'm not here to persuade or convince nobody that's going to watch this later or watching this now. This is just information. Go do your own research. Then it becomes something you know, not something you heard. Go research what I'm telling you and come back and tell me, Minister, you was actually wrong. Blah, 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 blah. Matter of fact, I put my email at the bottom of the screen. Where is it at? There it is. Send me an email if I'm wrong, or you find more about this information. I would love to hear it. Continuing on. The term Afro-American, which enjoyed a brief popularity in 1960, has an 1831 citation in the Old English Dictionary. That's OED, Old English Dictionary. But last April, this is the person talking, first person, I did a routine search of the phrase in the Americas, historical newspapers, and Redex companies' very powerful database. Here you go. You guys want to write that down? Redex companies. It's a very powerful database of early U.S. papers. Write that down. Redex. If you guys want to look at some old articles about Native Americans or American Indians or American Negroes, Redex. It's a citation. Please look it up. It's a very powerful database of early U.S. newspapers, and surprised to be led to 1782 sermon published in Philadelphia. The sermon, whose only known surviving copy is at Harvard Houghton Library, was titled "A Sermon on a Capture of Lord Cornwallis." The title page of the pamphlet included a byline by African Americans, singular. The sermon gives few clues about the identity of the preacher, but I concluded it was written by someone who was Black, had some ties to South Carolina, and by his own admission did not have the benefit of a liberal education. Beyond that, I had no clue of his background or what kind of person he was. So I sought out some expert advice. Richard Newman, a scholar of African American history, who is now the director of the Library of Company of Philadelphia, says he is not sure that the author was a person of color, despite the byline. The tone and style of the pamphlet diverged from some key aspects of Black writing at the time. Newman says, where many African Americans emphasized the story of Exodus, which highlighted biblical prophecy, the unrepentant masters would be punished by the righteous God. This pamphlet focuses on a tale of Samuel. The theme of the Old Testament story would surely have resonated with both slave and free Blacks. The mighty will fall. Nevertheless, the biblical aggressive exegesis that follows focus more on keeping the faith in the Lord rather than the smiting of slaveholder. On the other hand, Edward Rungemer, associated professor of African American studies and history at Yale, believes the writer was Black and finds significance in the fact that the pamphlet was published in Philadelphia. With the Revolution, when a significant number of Upper South slaveholders began to manument their slaves, free people from Virginia, Maryland, Delaware were attracted to Philadelphia, says Rumage. Y'all see that? Now, you have two individual scholars or professors. One said he probably was Black due to the fact of what was happening. A lot of slave owners were monumenting their slaves. Manumission is when you just let them go for whatever reason. There was something called meritorious manumission. Lincoln will show up a little bit later in the early 1860s, and he will offer what was be known as emancipation compensation. The Emancipation Compensation Act is going to follow later, years later, after slaveholders just monumenting their slaves. Manumission. Then it goes on and on. It says the sermon suggested that, in fact, in fact, stayed, and the writers argued that they moved to embrace the American experiment. On this point, Newman agrees if it was written by African American, he says the pamphlet may indeed have been strategically aimed at integrating blacks into new society, new social and political order. This notion fits nicely with the author's byline in African American. The idea that blacks might be a part of American society was in the air by the 1760s. Now, all this shit is cap. I'm gonna prove my point in a second. So they're saying by the 1760s, they could see how black people, people of color, wanted to be a part of American society. So let's do this real quick. Let's write down 1760, and right under that, we're gonna put 1860. I gotta forgive my background noise. 1860. Watch this. And that statement kind of pissed me off a little bit. This statement right here. The point of Newman says that the pamphlet may indeed have been strategically aimed at integrating blacks into the new social and political order. This notion fits nicely with the author's byline, African American. The idea that blacks might be a part of American society was in the air by the 1760s. That people of color might be a part of American society. Like what are y'all talking about? So in 1760, they was entertaining the idea. He's like, well, maybe by 1760, black people actually wanted to be a part of American society. Let's do this real quick. Let me go back to it. Hold on, fam. I'm gonna drop this link in the I think there's a new feature on here now where you can like you can share notes. Let's see if it works. Where's it at? Banner notes. I'm not sure if you guys can see the notes section or not. I'm not sure. But there is a note section. I'm not sure if you guys see it or not. Let's see if I can do this real quick. I can drop it in the comments. All right, there it is. That's the link. You guys want to take the link out a little bit later. Feel free to read back through that. But that's the first time the term African American was mentioned. We talk about 1782, then again 1883, I think it said. The term African American. Let's go talk about some Africans in America. Africans in America. We're going to go back with Anthony Johnson. Let's do a recap about who Anthony Johnson was. Okay? You guys don't mind. What bro say? We was already building the country by then. So you're contributing. You're contributing Benjamin Banneker. Let's take a quick look. I don't mind. I do not mind. But I'm going to counter your Benjamin Banneker. What year was Benjamin Banneker in the Americas? Okay, so now we got Benjamin Banneker, aka Benjamin Bay. 1731. We're gonna put Benjamin Banneker. Yes, Benjamin Banneker was a bad brother. He laid out DC. He built the clock over in London or some crap like that. Benjamin Banneker. Now Benjamin Banneker, 1731. Can you guys see that? Because the brother brought up Benjamin Banneker. He died in 1806. Let's see when Crispus Attucks. So Crispus Attucks is going to predate Benjamin Banneker just a little bit, okay? Just a little bit, and not that Crispus Attucks built any fucking thing of significance, okay? But he was pretty significant. And it says Attucks was a man of mixed African and Native American descent. Crispus Attucks was, let's see, watch this. Which Native American tribe was Crispus Attucks a part of? I think it was part of Pamunkey, I want to say, or Wampanoag, Upper Pamunkey. Wampanoag, yeah, Wampanoag, yeah. Crispus Attucks was a Wampanoag. Bro say Benjamin was Native ancestry. I've read. Oh, listen, he might be. Crispus Attucks was Wampanoag. He also had Natick heritage. His father was an enslaved African, they say. This is Crispus Attucks, though. Let's see who Benjamin Bay. Was Benjamin Banneker a descendant of Native American tribe? No. But this is fucking Google. Like, come on. His ancestors from Africa and Europe. However, his mixed heritage led to some conflict historical account. So there's some conflict right there. Benjamin Banneker. His maternal side, his grandmother, Molly Wash, was an English woman who was sent to American colonies as an indentured servant. After completing her service, she bought and freed an enslaved African man by the name of Bannaky or Banaka, and they married. That's his maternal side. His paternal side, his father, Robert, was a freed slave from Guinea who married Mary, the daughter of Molly and Wallace Bannaky. So Crispus Attucks, Benjamin Banneker, descent nature is he is an African in America. Oh, but I got more though. I got more. I'm gonna talk about Harriet Tubman ass, Sojourner Truth. These were Africans, bro. These are not who you think they are. But because every February we hop in line to celebrate these Africans in America, some kind of way we associate ourselves with being from Africa when you're not from Africa. So now we know that Benjamin Banneker's father was from Guinea. Okay? This direct African descent. Benjamin Banneker himself, along with his earliest biography, described him as having only African ancestry. Speculative claim, some later biographers have speculated that his grandfather, Bannaky, may have been from West African tribe, such as the Dogon people of Mali, who are known for their astronomical knowledge. However, this unverified speculation based on the Dogon's reputation, not direct genealogical evidence. Benjamin Banneker, African. Matter of fact, let's go and get a T-chart together real quick. Thank you, brother, for bringing that up. I appreciate you. On the left side of your T-chart, put AA for African in America. And then on the right side, we're just going to put A for American, because we know the American are the true copper-colored people of the North American continent. So on your AA side, which is Africans in America, go and put Benjamin Banneker over there. Just put Ben Banneker. And then on the American side, because he is Native American, we're going to put Crispus Attucks on the right-hand side, please. Attucks. So we got Benjamin Banneker, who's African in America, and then we have Crispus Attucks, who's a Native American. We could really end the live right here, because that was my whole fucking point. That was my whole entire point, family. That was my whole entire point. Now, Crispus Attucks was mulatto. He was Indian and white. He was definitely mulatto, just like Prince Hall. This is a picture of Benjamin Banneker, or a liking of Benjamin Banneker. Benjamin Bay. Crispus Attucks. This shit gave me Crispus Attucks. That's crazy. Crispus Attucks. This is a picture of Crispus Attucks. They got them afros. Look like Afro-Americans, don't they? This is Crispus Attucks. Prince Hall. This is Prince Hall. A likeness of Prince Hall. Now, Prince Hall is a whole other goddamn story. Prince Hall was from the islands. His father was from the islands. His stepfather, which was a white man by the name of William P. Hall, there was his stepfather. I think his mother was from Africa. Prince Hall mother was from Africa as well. So Prince Hall, on your T chart under African American, put Prince Hall. So now we got the three major early figures of the 1700s out of the way. That's Crispus Attucks, Benjamin Banneker, and Prince Hall. They're out the way, and they were all 1700s. We're talking about the 1600s. We're talking about 100 years prior to any of those three brothers. And 2 out of the 3 are Africans in America. Maybe not from Africa directly, but they're first generation Africans in the Americas, meaning their parents are from Africa. That means their parents are born in Africa and they were born here, which makes them what? African in America. And I'm going to show you another point here in a second. Once I get to the 20 odd so Africans or Angolans who were brought to Hampton, Virginia, one of the ladies was with child. One of the slaves off the ship in the early colonies, she was with child. And when she gave birth to that child, her child became an African in the America. Well, African in the colonies at that point. It wasn't a fucking America, but you get what I'm saying, right? So just by me explaining, and you guys really helped me out on that. Oh, right. Easy. In the bag. In the bag. In the freaking bag. You saw Crispus Attucks, who was Native American and European. And even when we say European, hell, we could be talking about. Let me show you something real quick. I promise we're gonna get to Anthony Johnson. I just keep getting sidebar, but it's so much information, family. Hold on. Let's see here. I'll make this last point, and then we're gonna move on real quick. But you guys got to see this shit right here. Even in the early colonies, when you see somebody that was mixed with European, what bro say? Black European, right? Black Euros, right. Thank you. That's my damn point, right? So it's like even we say Europeans, let's pull up King Charles II. We can pull up people like King Charles II. Now, of course, King Charles II is fucking whitewashed in his photo, but he's black. This is a brother. I told you Charles was responsible for the Carolinas under the Lord Proprietors. St. James Palace, London, United Kingdom. He's European, but he's also black. He ain't black. The hell if he ain't. At 6 foot tall, with his swarthy complexion, his black hair, King Charles II certainly appeared strikingly different to both his father and Lord Protectors who had preceded him. He looked different. He was known in his youth as the little black boy. So when we say mixed with European, we're not talking about white European. And the fact that we say European or Europa, which is what? Western Asia. Europe is Western Asia. Okay, don't get it twisted. Europe is not a damn continent. Europe is a peninsula. Europe is a peninsula, not a continent. Let's get that straight. So what we have to realize is when we make these comments, we have to understand, man, This portrait shows King Charles II at the end of his life and conveys both his striking appearance and something of his personality. He was unusually tall and dark for an Englishman of his time, and while it's charming, clever, let's say, effect, affectionate, he was cynical and lazy. Yeah, he was definitely black. Black Boy, in fact, was a pet name given to the heir to the throne by his mother, Henrietta Maria, French by birth, but with some Spanish blood in her veins. Uh-oh. Here we go. Here we go. You got to dodge the hijack. Dodge the hijack. In this particular century, in the 1600s, 1500s, 1400s, 1300s, and beyond, going backwards, when you see the term Spanish or Spaniard, you have to think about the Moors. You have to think about the Moors. I'm going to show you in a second. Did I write it down? You have to think about the Moors. Spanish blood in her vein. Give me 1 second. Let me pull up my because I just made a TikTok post about this. Matter of fact, I can pull it up just right here. Give me 1 second, fam. Let me pull up this. Here we go. I just put it on my damn page the other day on let me keep this up now. I'm gonna pull up another tab real quick for y'all and show y'all about this Spanish blood. When they say Spaniard or Spanish, they're talking about the Blackamoors of the Iberian Peninsula, and the Moors who were in Europe. They didn't call them Moors. Hold on. Let's see. Yes. I don't know the question I asked. Mini span. I got to type it in this way because that's how I had screenshot it. Spaniards have Moorish. All right, hold on. All right. Y'all see that? Yes. Many Spaniards have Moorish or North African blood, though the term Moorish is a broad term referring to Arabs, Berbers, and other North Africans' descent who ruled the Iberian Peninsula for centuries. Genetic studies show significant North African ancestry in the Spanish population, particularly in the southern regions like Andalus, due to centuries of intermarriage between Moorish settlers and local Iberian population. We're talking about the blood of the Spaniards. Okay? Y'all see that? Now let me go back. I'm motherfucking teaching today. I don't care what y'all say. I'm teaching today. I am teaching today. In fact, so I'm on my pastoral shit. Y'all see the Cash App at the bottom, man. Y'all want to put something in the collection plate? I mean, we're gonna keep going. But at any point in time, you just feel the spirit move you to drop something in that collection plate. Please feel free, because I know I'm fucking teaching today. I feel it. I got the spirit. I feel it. Okay. This to my King Charles. Henrietta Maria, French by birth, but with some Moorish blood in her veins. Moorish blood in her veins. When Charles was born, he was said to have been swarthy complexion, and his mother used to refer to him as my beautiful black boy. You see how that Spanish blood is in her, is in Charles, but that Spanish blood is not Spanish blood. It's Moorish blood. It's Moorish blood. What's the Apple Pay? I got Apple Pay. I'm sorry. It's Moorish blood. Hold on, fam. Put my number up here. Hold on, I'm fucking up. 3. You got one drop Apple Pay? That's fine too. It's in the chat. That's Moorish blood. You guys gotta dodge the hijack when you see the word Spaniard or Spanish. Look at the time frame, because I'm about to show you. I'm about to show you the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria you've been hearing all about when you was in school that brought Christopher Colombo to the Americas, which it wasn't. It was known as what was it called at that time? I think of it in a second. They call it the Spanish territories, part of the Spanish Empire. Hispaniola. When he came to Hispaniola on the second journey, those three ships or three vessels were manned by Moors. Then I'm gonna show you the Moorish brother who helped out Cortez. And you know what this Moorish brother did? I think his name was Escobar. Escobar. I'm gonna show you in a second. But Escobar, this joker, he over here, he's Moorish. He over here talking to Native Americans. I said, how in the hell in the 1500s is this man talking to the Native Americans? And he talked to Native Americans in Alabama. He talked to the ones in Mississippi. He talked to the ones in Texas. He talked to the ones in Mexico. Now, there's at least 5 or 6 tribes between where Escobar landed and where he got to in Mexico. He came back. They're looking for the lost city of gold, of course. But how is this man talking to these different tribes in different tongues? How did he do that? I kind of find out they were speaking Hebrew. Mind blowing. Then the fact that this Moorish brother speaking Hebrew to Native Americans, or I'm saying Native Americans, the indigenous Indians and Native Americans out west. This Moor is talking to all of them in different languages, and come to find out they're speaking goddamn Hebrew. Then it makes sense. The Sephardic Moors who came to the colonies after the expulsion of 1492, who later in the early 1920s, later 1800s, who sets up the Moorish Zionist temple that Timothy Drew goes to resurrect. Now it makes sense. Now it makes sense. Damn. Anyway, back to this. So the black boy, King Charles. When you see the term, European blood, don't think white. Just try to retrain your brain not to think white. Oh, but wait. Hold on. Let's pull up one more, just for good measure. Let's bring up the first black queen of England, shall we? Nope, it's not Charlotte. It's not Charlotte. Let's go right here. And of course, they're gonna look, see, first black queen pops up right there. Of course, they're gonna whitewash her. They can't have y'all thinking that she was, look like one of us. They can't have y'all thinking that shit at all. What she look like? Philippia of Hollywood. Specific appearance is debated, but historians describe her as effing, suggest she had a well proportionate maternal figure with broad features and a kind face, though some accounts of her youth mention somewhat olive brown. Where my Moors at in the chat? Where are my Moors at in the chat? Moor Science Temple Moors in the chat. Where y'all at? Remember olive tone color? Olive tone color? Shouts out to the Davis family. Appreciate the donation. Thanks for the Apple Pay. Appreciate you. It's from the Davis family on YouTube. Appreciate y'all so much. That's love. That's love, man. Appreciate y'all. That is love. Thank you for your donation. I was trying to get out of here. Hold on, give me a second, y'all. Appreciate y'all. Again, if you want to hit that Cash App or hit the donations, it's up to y'all. Appreciate y'all so much, man. But listen, let's learn more about Philippia, because I think that there's more information about her. Now, they're downplaying how she looked. Let's see. You can't use the term race because they wouldn't. Philippine of Holland was definitely proven to be black, although a small group of historians suggest she may have had African or Moorish ancestry. due to the 14th century description of having brown skin and dark eyes. However, the most historians disagree with this conclusion, noting that description could refer to a Mediterranean phenotype. Her dark-skinned father, even her sister, Philippia, and European ancestry included the Hungarian, Norwegian, Finnish, and French roots also make it unlikely that she was black. The source, a missionary sent by King Edward II to Hollywood as access to Philippia as potential bride for her son, Edward III, described her having brown skin all over and dark eyes. This description, coupled with her father, Williams I, dark coloring, and historical presence of Moors in the region, has led to some to believe Philippia was African of Moorish descent. Now, that's two people I just showed y'all. So when you see the term European, do not think necessarily that they had buttermilk skin. Don't necessarily think they had buttermilk complexion skin or white out skin. That was not the case at all. These are black folk. King James and all of them. Okay. Now, back to Anthony Johnson, because we don't went way off course. But I had to show you guys help to give it some complexity and give some context to it so you guys know what's going on. Okay. Anthony Johnson. Let's get ready to take notes, because we're talking about prominent Africans in America. So far in our T-chart, we know that Crispus Attucks was a Native American or American indigenous people. And we know that Benjamin Banneker was an African in America. Prince Hall was an African in America. We're talking about African descent. First generation. Let's read about Anthony Johnson and who he was. Now, Anthony, he's a farmer. Anthony Johnson was a man from Angola. We covered this last time, which achieved wealth in the early 17th century. Colony of Virginia, held as an indentured servant. Now, this indentured servitude was very popular in the early 1600s. That means you were under contract. And under contract, you agreed to work a term for 7 years, some cases 3 years, some cases 4 years. That contract was called a bond. In fact, hold on. Let me look this up real quick. Let's see. What is? I want to look it up before I tell y'all. Hold on. Nah, it didn't come up. Anyway, that contract. Let's read about indentured servitude real quick. Let's stay right here. Yeah, we go. Let's read about how indentured servitude worked, because it was definitely a contract. An indentured signed by Henry Mayer with an X in 1738. This contract, indentured servitude was a form of contracting. Indentured servants is a form of labor which a person's contracted to work without salary. Do you understand what the hell slavery was about now? These individuals wanted workman comp. They wanted HR. I tell you guys, during the time of supposed slavery, if there was an HR department or equal opportunity department, you would have never heard about it. You have never heard about it, ever. The contract called indentured may been entered in voluntarily or prepaid lump sum as payment for some goods or services. purportedly eventually compensation or debt or repayment. An indenture may also be imposed involuntarily as a judicial punishment. The practice has been compared to the similar institution of slavery, although there are differences between slavery and indentured servitude. Is it really? Because indentured servitude can be imposed involuntarily as a judicial punishment. That means jurisdictional matter. That's why anytime you're in court, you want to ask the question, is this, you want to challenge the jurisdiction? Because the jurisdiction of what's going on can implement certain punishment and carry certain fines and so on and so forth. Under certain cases, ordinances, i.e. violations of policy. Okay, so now we understand that servitude is the subject, voluntarily or involuntarily. This says indentured servitude can be voluntarily entered in a contract or involuntarily entered the contract. Now, do you understand the amendment when it says slavery is no longer legal, nor voluntary or involuntary, unless you're convicted of a crime, jurisdictional punishment? I hope this makes sense. This is the involuntary or voluntary matter of which a person will work under a contractual condition for no wage until the contract is satisfied, or the bond is satisfied. So when you say that your people were in bondage, we're not talking about chains and shackles. Now, does it make sense when you watch these slave movies, when you hear about the individuals buying their freedom? You ever ask yourself what the hell they're buying? They're not buying anything. They're paying off the loan. They're paying off the debt that's attached to the bond that keeps them bound to the plantation. And because they don't receive wages, any articles of clothing, shoes, housing would be accrued as a debt. That slave shack wasn't free. That land that the slave shack was on, master had to pay tax on that goddamn land. So I would imagine that he tallied that shit up every month, every year. And the families are growing. Slaves are fucking. They got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 kids now. Master got to make sure there's enough livestock to feed these motherfuckers. So I'm not paying you guys wages, you're going to be here in perpetuity. Unless you find a way, which most did, they bought their freedom. They bought their bond. They paid off the bit bond. They paid off the contract. And they saved more money some kind of way. And they bought their wives and their children. They paid the master for the contract. How much is left on my contract, master? $780? Okay, I got $400 saved. Another 6 years, I'm getting the hell out of here. And these are the smart brothers who bought their contract or paid off their bond. When you go to jail, who's going his bond? Who will pay the bond? Where's the bondsman? Why is there a bond on him? That's a legal condition of the jurisdiction. You owe us now. So when you're watching these movies and you hear people say, he bought his freedom. He bought his freedom. Because each individual person had a bond assigned to them. Now, those bonds later will be traded on Wall Street. That's later when you get into the trading of bonds. And in 2025, our ass is under the same conditions because it says voluntary or involuntary. How do you voluntarily put yourself back into bondage in 2025? We're not talking about 17, 18, nothing. We're talking about 2025. How do you voluntarily put yourself back in bondage? By your signature. Anything you signed with your signature, because your signature carries the currency, not the paper, not the paper they call currency. It doesn't carry the energy. Your signature. You ever go out to eat, family? How many of y'all go out to eat? Press 111 if you ever went out to eat with your family, with your girl, with your spouse, with your kids. How many of y'all ever go out to eat? How do you ever? How many? Press 111 if you guys go out to eat. I'll put it because I'm gonna go out to eat today. 111 in the chat if you ever went out to eat. And I would imagine when you go out to eat, we're gonna eat good tonight. We're gonna eat good, okay? Order what you want. We're gonna get a couple of drinks, a beer or something like that, or whatever y'all drink. We're gonna give me extra cheese on my shit. Give me appetizer too, and a dessert. We're eating good. And now at the end of you enjoying that food, when the waiter or the waitress comes to your table, and it's 2025, let's face the fact, a lot of us are not paying with cash. But let's talk about those who got cash in their hand. Those notes, those bank notes in your hand are tied to a debt. They're tied to a bond. That dollar is not worth $1. That's why they're like, damn, prices are going up. No, price is not going up at all. Inflation is happening, which means it's decreasing the amount of what that note can carry. And if you look at that dollar bill, a $2 bill, a $20 bill, $100 bill, in the bottom right-hand corner, somewhere on there, there's a signature on there. That signature is the guarantor. Now, when you get finished eating your food, you probably give them your debit card or do the tap thing. They bring back a receipt. That receipt is a contract. That receipt is a fucking contract. Now, that receipt or that contract or what you just need, you can walk out of it if you want to and not sign shit. And legally, they cannot charge your card because you did not sign it. Now, I'm not saying try this. You might get in trouble. Don't. If you ate the food, be a good citizen and pay for your food. But the point is, that piece of paper don't mean shit until your signature hits it. Now, your signature carries the weight. Your signature carries the money. There's no money on your card. Those are just numbers on a computer. I got 17,000 in my account. That's just numbers. The bank can subtract, add. It's just fucking numbers. You think you're wealthy because your bank account, which is fictitious, they're just numbers. But when you put your signature on some shit, that signature is the power and the authority that they need. So back to this, those bonds, slavery was not about bondage as you think chains and shackles. The individuals who were in chains and shackles suffered from what's called drapetomania. Drapetomania. Which brings my next point real quick. Let me pull this up. Show me the scene from Roots when Fiddler. Oh shit! Not this scene. Scene from Roots. Scene from Roots when Fiddler was. This shit going too fast. Hold on. Scene from Roots from Roots when this is Fiddler. Fiddler was introducing of Kunta. I'm gonna show y'all something real quick. Then we're gonna get back to the lesson. If I can find it. Of course they're gonna hate. Damn it. I'm trying to find that one scene when scene from Roots when Fiddler. Give me 1 second, family. I probably should save it, but hold on. I find this scene is gonna kill it, bro. It ain't gonna show it. But I have to find it on my find it later on my TikTok or something. But there's a scene on Roots when Fiddler was introducing Kunta to the other individuals on the plantation. And that scene is so powerful because it he was telling them that I know y'all never seen no African before. And he was explaining that Kunta was from Guinea. He said this right here is a Guinea. It's a wild man from Guinea. That's Fiddler over there with the violin. Now Fiddler with the violin is also portrayed in 12 Years a Slave because that brother had a violin as well. But anyway, those individuals in the chains and shackles right there, they're from Guinea. You have Guinea, you have Angola. Focus on Guinea and Angola because we just found out the Benjamin Banneker people from Guinea. Kunta Kinte in the movie, as Fiddler was explaining, is from Guinea. These are Africans in America. Fiddler was explaining to the rest of the plantation, these individuals were already here. And Fiddler tells them, this is a wild African, he said. Master Renner called running through the plains of Guinea. This is what Fiddler was saying. And I'm trying to use the same little accent he was using, but he was like, this is a wild man over in Guinea. Hold on, let me see. Amistad, let me see. The movie Amistad. Now, those are people from Guinea in the picture right there. Africans. Now let's look at the people from there we go, right here. These are Angolans. They're from Angola. These are Angolans. They're Moors. You see the turbans on their heads? They're Moorish. Now, the reason I'm showing you guys Amistad, and the reason I showed you roots to show you that Kunta Kinte was from Guinea. These individuals from Angola. Why am I showing you Angolans and Guineas? Because that's where Anthony Johnson's from. But look what Anthony Johnson got coined with. Uh-oh, did I lose my point? I did. It's right here. Hold on. We went in servitude. Let's go back to Anthony Johnson real quick. Here we go. Anthony Johnson was a tobacco farmer from the province of Maryland. He attained great wealth after completing his term, his contract, his term. He completed his term, his contract, and has been referred to as the Black patriarch of the first community of Negro property owners in America. This is where I want to segue to my next point. Negro property owners in America. So this guy, Anthony Johnson, he's from Angola. Let me show you guys, he's from Angola. The Kingdom of Ndingo, Portuguese Angola. And we learned last time about the Kingdom of Ndingo is ran by Queen Nzinga. Queen Nzinga shipped out hundreds of thousands of people. Anthony Johnson from Angola. He's known as the patriarch of the first community of Negro property owners in America. Now, who do you guys speculate these first property, these Negro? He was the patriarch of a community of African property owners in America. What do you guys think happened 100 years after he set this up? 200 years. I'll show you what happened to these communities of Negro property owners or African property owners, because Anthony Johnson is an African in America who became a property owner in America. Let me show you this right quick. So Anthony Johnson was a slave owner. 10 Black slave owners in America. This guy right here, Antonio Dubois, Maria, William, Joshua, Desley, John, William, Meredith Calhoun, 10 Black slave owners that would tear apart historical perception. Talk black to me. 10 black slave owners. You see Anthony Johnson's name mentioned right there? Because Anthony Johnson became the first black property owner, a community of African property owners, not just property of land people, owning people also. White and black people, they owned. So they have to show you these slave movies of white massa and these white hillbilly overseers. They dare not show you a movie where black folks owned other Negroes and they own white folks too, like Anthony Johnson, his community of African slave owners. These are Africans in America. Stop calling yourself an African American. You're not a damn African American. 1782, the term African American appears in a sermon. 1988, Jesse Jackson popularized the term against the will of the people. Nobody agreed to that shit. Jesse just did it. Black slave owners. Anthony Johnson became the father, the patriarch of African slave owners in America. This nigga owned other black people in America, and he owned white folks in America. Because the earlier people who came over here from England, the Caucasians, were indentured servants, aka slaves, under a bond. The stock owners of the Virginia Company, the Philadelphia Company, had money invested on land development and needed cheap labor to work the land for no money at all. Zero funds. So why did they get the Indians who were already here to pick the cotton? How many Native Americans were exported out of America? Let's do some numbers real quick. Fact check. Tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of Native Americans were exported from America, primarily to the Caribbean. Now, this is the slave trade. This is the Atlantic slave trade. But you don't hear about this one, do you? You don't hear about this slave trade. This is your slave trade right here. This is your this is your ancestral slave trade right here. If you claim to be from the Americas originally, like I do, because I don't buy into the African shit. It's no disrespect to our kinfolk, but all your skin folks ain't your kinfolks. You feel what I'm saying? This is no shot at Africa at all. I promise you it's not, fam. But at the same time, we have to understand that this is the Atlantic slave trade that I want you guys to focus on right here. Tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of Native Americans were exported from the Americas, primarily to the Caribbeans and Europe. Why are they taking them to Europe? I thought it was... Why are they taking them to Europe for? Through enslavement. And this ain't no goddamn indentured servitude right here. This ain't no contract right here. These are POWs, forced prisoners between 17th and 19th century. That's 200 years. Estimates vary significantly, but some sources indicating between 1670 and 1715, English traders alone sold 24,000 to 51,000 Native Americans from the southern U.S. Historians estimate total number of Native Americans enslaved in North America, excluding Mexico, can range from 147,000 to 340,000. Pay attention to from the southern U.S. From the southern U.S. Who's in the southern U.S.? The Gullah, the Yamacraw, the Yamansi, the later Seminole, Creek, Crow, Blackfoot. Now, the Pamunkey and the Wampanoag had their own skirmishes with the early British settlers coming in the Maryland, D.C., Virginia territory. But the southern states, the wars that broke out in the South, With these individuals being exported. Now we know that these are not the TP Indians. These are not the high cheekbones, long hair, Asian looking Indians. These are not them. They were on the West Coast. They came around the 1700s. Some a little bit earlier. These are not TP Indians. Listen, if y'all focus y'all study to just the southern region of America, man, particularly the southeast region historically, boy, it's so much rich history, family. It's so much history, y'all. It's so much history, family. Now, let's focus on for a second. Let's talk about the southeast region of the U.S. during this time frame. Key factors in time frame: enslavement. The European colonists and later American settlers enslaved Native Americans. These are two distinct groups. American colonists. Now, who are the American colonists? The American colonists never came over here. The American colonists were the ones who established the Virginia Assembly. They established the Virginia Company. Those are patent and landholders over in Europe. These are the individuals that King James gave permission to settle places like Jamestown. Charles II with the Lord proprietors. Watch this. I'm going to show you European colonists. It says in later Americans, the settlers came after the fact. You had pilgrims came over a little bit earlier, but they were mostly religious and clergymen. Those were the Brownistons, the Calvin and the Quakers. They came earlier on. The settlers are the ones they brought in to settle, to take up permanent residence here. However, the European colonists were a lot different. Lord proprietors. That's Lord proprietor. It was 8. I said 5. 8. The Lord proprietors were a group of 8 Englishmen. These are colonists. These are the landholders, the land patent holders, the investors. These are the banks who finance those ships to come back and forth, who put seed and tools and oxen and animals on the ships to come over here to set up the colonies. These motherfuckers didn't come over here at all. They just had signed. They had land deeds. For what? I'm not going over there. You know how horrible it was to come over here back then for them? That shit was terrible for them to come over. I'm not going over there. I'm gonna set this shit up for my great grandkids, but I'm not gonna go over there. It is rough over there. I'm not gonna leave London, England, which is already developed and flourishing. I'm laying up in. No, I'm not going over there. The Lord proprietors were a group of 8 Englishmen, including Anthony Ashley Cooper, Berkeley brothers, who were granted a royal charter by King Charles II in 1663. I just told y'all that, to establish and govern the colony of Carolina. These are the governors. These are the colonists. And then we can look at the Virginia Assembly, which is the same thing set up by James. They held extensive power, including the ability to create civil government, collect taxes, but their rule faced growing resistance from colonists or settlers, and was eventually dissolved in 1729 when the British Crown purchased their rights to the colony. These motherfuckers were the colonial powers, not the settlers. I'm going to show you another person of interest who had land charters. Who granted James Oglethorpe, Georgia? King George. So write down George, Charles, James. Write that down. George. Let's start with the top. Write down James, King James. That's going to be northeast North America. Write down Charles. Charles is going to be southeast seaboard. And then write down George. So James, Charles, George. George dealing with Georgia. They couldn't go into Florida. They can't go into Florida yet. Spain still had Florida. King George granted James Oglethorpe the charter to establish the colony of Georgia in 1732. Oglethorpe was one of 21 trustees. Anytime you have a trust, you have to have trustees. We'll talk about trustees and charters and bonds and all that stuff at a later date. Who governed the new colony as a buffer state against Spanish Florida in a haven for Britain's poor. The colony was named Georgia in honor of King George. Now, I'm going to show you something, because remember those white servants and those white slaves who were brought over here in the early 1600s and the early 1700s who were under contract? They were running away. They were not completing their contracts. These were white runaways. And guess where they ran to? They ran down south. So the story of them telling you that your people ran up north for freedom, well, they ran down south for freedom. They ran their ass straight to Georgia for freedom. Watch this. James Oglethorpe established Georgia as a free state. James Oglethorpe helped establish Georgia with the intent of creating a haven for poor and whatever it is, society that prohibited slavery, making it the only British colony to do so for a period while Georgia was not technically a free state in modern sense as British colony. Oglethorpe visions for it included social equity and rejection of slavery before the colony was founded. Before the colony's founding. So Georgia was never even set up to be a goddamn slave state. This was going to be what was a penal colony. Georgia was. He wanted to establish to help out the poor white folk. He wanted to help out those poor white runaways. This is James Oglethorpe. Oglethorpe was a strong opponent of slavery, believing in the contrary to his humanitarian deals that would prevent the colony from thriving. Georgia was for a time the only British colony to ban chattel slavery before the American Revolution. The ban on slavery was not permanent. Colonists later pressured the trustees to allow slavery, and Georgia became a slave-holding colony in 1750. Oglethorpe intended Georgia to be a refuge for British poor and debtor, offering them the chance for a better life. The poor and debtors, that debt was due to that bond they signed. That contract, I told you earlier, that contract is attached to a amount of money that has to be worked off. And that's why in the movies you hear slaves, I bought my freedom. I got my freedom papers. That's a goddamn receipt from that bond being paid. The only other way that bond would have been paid if your master paid it for you under what was known as meritorious manumission. Or the government gave you money for that bond. Lincoln gives, I forgot what I was going to say. Hold on. What's it called? There we go. Lincoln gives the emancipation compensation. Hold on. Lincoln gives the Emancipation Compensation Act. You either have to pay it off or the government will give you compensation for that bond. But that bond had to be paid either way. So the next time you watch them damn movies and you see them people say, I bought my freedom. No, they bought out their contract. Lincoln started an initiative providing compensation to the slave owners for each person they just let free. He basically was paying the bond off. And this was called the Emancipation Compensation Act, which is before the Emancipation Proclamation Act. Well, there wasn't even an act. There was just a fucking announcement, which I talked about so much before, which makes Juneteenth in the announcement under General Order Number 3 just some bullshit. Okay? What are you saying? Is that why still bidding for the cop? Yes. Those are just contracts. Contracts. You guys want to get into contract, go to what is it? Oh God, brain fart. So I forgot what it's called, contract.gov. And there's so many contracts on it you can bid for, man. It's just contractual stuff, family. That's the point I'm making. Let's move on, because we ain't got much time to move on. Recap. These are Angolans. The movie Amistad, these are Angolans. The movie Amistad was based on the slave ship, the San Juan Batista. Or was it the White Lion? Let me see. Let me make sure I keep myself honest. The movie Amistad was based on what slave ship? It's called Amistad. The movie Amistad is based on a slave ship called Amistad, a Cuban schooner. Look. Boo-doo. Schooner. Told you. No such thing as a damn slave ship. How y'all are thinking. These are schooners. I can show you what a schooner is too. A small situation. That's the same kind of vessel that the guy on Twitter slave got off of. It's a schooner. Little bitty old thing. Couple people fit on there. Where 53 Africans revolted in 1839 while being transported as slaves from Cuba to a plantation, leading to a landmark legal battle in the United States. Now let's find out where they were from. Where were the Africans on Amistad from? They're from Sierra Leone coast, Guinea. The Africans on the Amistad were from the Sierra Leone in the present-day West Africa. They were captured near their homes in the interior, marched to the coast like Lomboko, and then illegally sold into slavery and transported to Cuba before the revolt eventually returned them to Sierra Leone. The Mende people. Guinea, right? Let's see this real quick. Where were the slaves on the San Juan Batista from? They're from the Kingdom of Ningango. Who else is from here? The Kingdom of Ningango. Remember, your boy Anthony Johnson's from here too. Angola. They were captured by Portuguese forces and marched to the port of Luanda and forced onto a ship which was bound for Spanish colony Veracruz in Mexico. They weren't even coming to North America. They were going to Mexico. The captives from the Kingdom of Ningango in West Central Africa, they were captured by Portuguese. About 350 slaves were loaded onto a Spanish ship. Let's write down the numbers real quick and let's add them up. Shall we? Can we do that real quick? Let's see. Now, they don't come to America to 1619. Not 350 of them, only 30 to 20. So this slave ship was called the San Juan Batista. And be careful with that term, ship. What type of ship was the San Juan Batista? It was called a galleon ship, Spanish ship, also known as a Nanaban or Southern Bourbon ship in Japan. We briefly talked about the slave ships the ships that were built by the Japanese versus the ships that were in Spain. Far more superior vessels, by the way, in Japan. Built in 1613 under the commission of Date Manumus, this large Western-style sailing vessel transported a Japanese diplomat mission across the Pacific to Mexico and to the Vatican. Now, these ships come into play under what was known as the Pacific slave trade. Pacific slave trade. The Pacific slave trade, also known as the blackbirding, was the 19th and early 20th century practicing of kidnapping or coercing Pacific Islanders into forced unpaid labor on plantations across the Pacific, Australia, and the Americas. This practice, though often framed as indentured servitude, was essentially slavery due to the deception and coercion and violence and the harsh conditions involved. This is known as the Pacific slave trade. The American domestic slave trade. Let's look at some maps. This is the slave trade that you see. These pictures have nothing to do with the African slave trade. Nathaniel, nothing to do with the African slave trade. The African slave trade was mostly in the Caribbean islands. There was nobody here in North America at that time to do anything between the 15 and 1600s. Now, there was a Spanish African colony in the state of Georgia in the 1500s, 1526, I think it was. 1526, which is about 100 years prior to the San Juan Batista and Anthony Johnson. 100 years prior to that, under Spanish occupation of the Spanish territory known as Floridian. Floridian was the entire East Coast, the entire Southeast hemisphere of the Americas belonged to Spain. But anyway, these photos right here is dealing with the domestic slave trade. This is the movie 12 Years a Slave. This is the movie Django. This is the movie Roots. Nothing to do with Africans. By the time this shit happened in the 1800s, it'd been over 300 years. 200 something years since an African came to the North American continent. In fact, in 1806, the importation of Africans were illegal anyway on the Atlantic coast. Pacific coast didn't have that rule over there. They went into the 1830s doing that shit. But 1806, you couldn't bring nobody from Africa to North America no more. It's too many already over here. Way too many. This is the slave trade that you have to focus on. This is the slave trade we have to focus on. This one, not the out of Africa theory. This is the one you see the auction block happen. These are not Africans. These are Americans. These are not African. These are Americans. Right here. Y'all see that map? This was the Atlantic slave trade that affected you the most. Ain't nobody coming out of Africa. There's no ships coming out of fucking Africa. They're coming from New York, New Jersey, Boston, Georgia, parts of Carolina. They're going around Florida. They're coming into Louisiana, going into Texas, Mississippi, Alabama. This is the slave trade right here, y'all. This is the one. And they also going along the rivers too, riverboats down the Mississippi River as well. This is the slave trade right here. This is the one, not Africa. I already showed you Africans in America from the African slave trade, mainly from Angola and from Guinea, right? This is the one. This is why they was running north for free. They was going back home, not running north for freedom, running back home. Because I'm from New Jersey, I'm from New York, I'm from Connecticut, I'm from Boston. I don't want to be in Louisiana no more. So I'm gonna find I-95. I'm gonna run my ass up I-95 back to New York. I'm gonna find I-10 and hit my ass out west to where I come from. Because I'm not, no, this is crazy. They kidnapped me and brought me down here. And they ain't no damn African either. You see that? Two different trades. It's called a trade because they were trading for commodity. Trading humans for commodities. Hold on. If I can switch my screen right quick. Switch my screen, show you guys this shit. There we go. Growth of enslaved population, natural growth, and forced immigration. You may have noticed this is a person. Let's see who this is. Let's get our citation together. I want y'all to say I said shit. Let's go do our citation. This is called A Very Brief Demographical History of Slavery, Tracing Enslaved Population from 1630 to 1866. This is Layman Stone, medium.com. Yeah, that's what it says, medium.com. Natural growth and forced immigration. You may have noticed I'm being a bit, whatever it says, in my terms. I refer to slaves as being brought to the United States as forced immigration rather than importation or trafficking. I avoid first because as a trade expert by training, I don't believe it's correct to include human beings as a commodity regardless of how wrong. Okay, where's the fucking information at, bro? The personal opinion is crazy. I also generally try to say enslaved people rather than slaves. I agree with that. Because, well, slavery is not an innate condition. It's something done to a person. So enslaved correctly highlights, got it. Where's the data at, bub? Come on. He said, the thing that should stand out to you is that slavery never decreased in the United States. Never. The enslaved population grew pretty consistently. This, by the way, was fairly remarkable. American slave owners made a big deal of the fact that American enslaved population was one of the only such population in the world that was experiencing natural growth. They claimed this proved that American slavery was humanitarian. And by the way, slavery in the United States was vastly gentler than in, say, French Saint Dominion or the Spanish colonies or British colonies. 1808, slave trade was made illegal. After 1808, illegal forced immigration of slave continued but gradually declined. However, in 1850s, some Southerners were called for legalizing of slave trade again to meet strong demands for slave and production they produced. Now, I want to think about something. We read a little bit earlier in the 1700s, in the 1600s, the British colonial powers to be needed a workforce to come set up the colonies, right? So they imported Europeans and they imported the POWs from Africa. Those POWs, by the way, from Africa. Those they were the bigger tribes, fought the smaller tribes, and we got proof of that. Queen Nzinga already proved that. Here we are again in the 1820s, 1850s, where King Cotton taking over. We had the same dilemma. We need a workforce that can harvest this cotton. Same dilemma. Same capitalistic mindset of Europeans. We got to make some goddamn money. We don't care how we do it. We got to make some money. Because right now we got bonds out on people. We got land patents. We got manufacturing deals about to come down the pipeline here in the late 1800s by way of the Industrial Revolution. We got to get on board. These black folks don't want to work. Well, they ain't going to work for free. Well, let's just force them to work. Well, we can't force them to work. Well, let's trick their ass to work then. Let's trick them to work. How are we going to trick them? Let's just strike a deal with them then. Let's tell them that they can get a percentage of the crop. Oh, you want to do tenant farming? Yeah, let's do tenant farming. What about sharecropping? Okay, sharecropping a little bit different. Sharecropping is slavery. So these are these conditions that were created around the idea of slavery, along with the idea of Africans being brought into America. And then the idea is put in your head that everybody is called an African American. I hope that I'm showing you guys the difference between the two groups. And I don't want to go into the whole Moorish situation of those are actually Moors being brought over here. And those are actually Moors participating. Fuck it. Let's do it. I don't care. So this is the entire southeast region of the United States that was slave population. You see it's more darker in Carolina, Mississippi River area, Georgia, North Florida, parts of Texas over here. The darker areas represents the more dense population of slavery up north, Maryland, Virginia, Boston, Jersey, etc., etc. This is the actual map of it right here. Let's see the legend real quick. It says 80% and upwards. in the darker areas. Even got numbers right here. This is the census on the map, right? This is the census on it, right? This is the map. South Carolina, free population was 300,000 free people. Slave population, 400,000. So it's probably about 100,000 people different. So the 271,000 free people had nothing to do with slavery. Mississippi had 354,000 free people. Alabama had more free people than enslaved people. Georgia had more free people than enslaved people. North Carolina had more free people than enslaved people. Virginia had more free people than enslaved people. Texas had more free people than enslaved people. Arkansas had way more free people than enslaved people. The total number of free people during the time of 1860 was 8,289,953. The total number of enslaved people was 3,950,343,000. The subtotal of everybody was 12,240,296 people counted in the census for the southern states that were either enslaved or free. Percentage-wise, state of Georgia, 43% of the population. Again, that was of the total. 595,000 people of color were free. 500,000 people of color were free. 462,000 were not free. Everybody of color was not a slave, nor were they in a perpetual state of slavery. In 2025, there is a population of Negroes in America that are not in jail, not on probation, never killed anybody, never got into a gang. But there is a population of people who are in gangs, who sell drugs, who commit violent offenses, who are in prison. The ones in prison, if they only wrote about the Negroes in prison for the next 30, 40, 50, 200 years, at some point in the future, our future generation would read about the heavy populated prison population of Negroes, and they would think all of us was in jail. When you and I are sitting on the computer having a conversation and we're not in jail. That's the same thing they did with slavery. It's the same idea they did with Africans in America too. They painted a broad brushstroke of all these folks coming into America. You never asked which America they came to. Oh, North America? What time they came here? Like what date they came here? 1619. How many came? 30. 1526. How many Africans came to America? 100. What the hell? Is it? Yeah, kind of. There was no huge population coming to North America in those time frames because we didn't own America. These are the Europeans talking. We didn't own America yet. We only had 12 colonies, or maybe 10. We only had 9 territories that we were still trying to establish towns, counties, cities, governments, police, fire department. We were still getting started. We ain't on a charter yet. There's no way to even govern these Negroes up here yet. However, in the islands of Havana, Cuba, what they call Puerto Rico today, the Bahamas, Jamaica, Haiti, parts of South America and Mexico, the government is already set up there. They've been working on it since 1492. So by 1692, 200 years, they had a 200-year jump start to really get shit going the way they need to get it going down in the islands. That's why the majority of Africans from the Guinea and Sierra Leone coast and Angola, the majority were being shipped to Mexico and the adjoining islands, not to North America. There wasn't anything for them to do yet here. There was a lot of white folks from Europe who were under bondage and contract, doing a lot of contract work. 7 years, it's like, fuck this, I'm about to go. Where you going? I'm going down to the new territory. Where? It's below Carolina somewhere. I don't even know what it's called yet. It don't have a name yet because James Oglethorpe had not signed up Georgia yet. But once Georgia gets signed up, oh boy, them white boys came running. We got free territory. What you mean? Georgia is not a slave state. We can run down there. They can't fuck with us down there. Or so they thought. 25 years later, they did fuck with them. But could you imagine this influx of white immigrants coming to Georgia where these black landholders are already there? Or I'm saying Indian. These Indian Negro landholders are already there with their farms, growing tomatoes, cucumbers, lettuce, collard greens, sweet potatoes. They're already growing food. Got their cows and they goat out there. Here come these white folks by the thousand. Hey, where y'all coming from? We're coming from up north, and these are criminals and prostitutes. These white folks are criminals. Watch this. Let me show you real quick. Ooh, boy, it's so much, family. It's so much. The majority of Europeans in the early colonies were prostitutes and criminals. They're gonna call it myth. The internet. The internet gotta stop. The internet gotta fucking stop, yo. I swear, they don't. The internet won't make white people look bad for nothing, even if it's the fucking truth. They try to clean it up. Oh, I hate it. It is a myth. It's a myth. It's a myth. Well, we got pictures, niggas, so we don't need to be a myth. It's a myth that the majority of European colonists were prostitutes and criminals. By large numbers of Europeans were forced or coerced to immigrate immigrate. Did serve as laborers in the colonies. The slaves, niggas. So quit saying laborers. See, they try to do anything to make themselves look good, y'all. Dodge the hijack. The vast majority of immigrants to the Americas, especially the 17th, 18th century, the 16 and 1700s, were indentured servants. We cannot call them slaves. Why not? They were slaves. They were slaves. And they were runaways too. Were indentured servants who came to seek a better economic perspective. That's a lie. Oh God, the internet is horrible, bro. I'm about to log off. Indentured servitude was primary labor source. In colonies like Virginia and Maryland, indentured servitude was a main system for recruiting labor in the 17th century. Over 2/3 of all European immigrants to the colonies were indentured servants. Indentured servants were poor. Now you understand why James Oglethorpe was trying to set up the Georgia colony for these poor white folks to run their ass to Georgia, who signed a contract to work for a fixed period, typically 4 to 7 years, to pay for their passage to the colonies. Convicts were transported, but were smaller portion of the population. Great Britain did transport tens of thousands of convicts to the early American colonies between 1717 and 1775, though this was still a minority of the total colony population. A 2018 study at Oxford Research Encyclopedia of American History estimates that 320,000 servants, mainly from Great British Islands and Germany, crossed the Atlantic between 17th and 18th century, making up 80% of white migrants. Around 50,000 of these were convicts. Let me drop off 50,000 murderers and killers in your fucking backyard. Let's put 5,000 killers in your county right now. All y'all that are listening. Let's just put 5 murderers in your city right now. 5 white murderers who ain't got nothing to lose. They're gonna lock you up. Them being locked up was better than them being in Europe. Do you know what they were called in Europe? Anybody in the chat can tell me what these poor criminals were called in Europe? What were they called in Europe? Anybody know? What do they call these cracker killers over in Europe? Before they came to the colonies as convicts, what were they called in Europe? What were they known as while they were living in Europe? Anybody know? What are serfs? A serf, which is an agricultural laborer bound under the feudal system to work on their lord's estate. Do you know what the lord's estate was over here in the Americas? Vagabonds but the term vagabond was applied to Negroes under what was called the Vagrancy Act. Vagabonds were applied to Negroes under the Vagrancy Act. And vagabonds referred to homeless black folk who look like hobos, they call them. And hobos turned into clowns in the circus in blackface with the tattered clothes on. And under the Vagrancy Act, as a vagabond, if you were found, meaning discovered walking, just chilling, kicking it, and you had no ID or no coins in your pocket, you could be arrested indefinitely. I told this story before. That's why growing up in the South, my grandmother would make sure that we always had at least $1 in our pocket or some change in our pocket. I never understood why until I studied that shit. So a vagabond would be a person who was considered to be a vagrant under what's called the Vagrancy Act that was passed shortly after the freeing of all the Negroes off the plantation. Because we're going to let y'all go. But we know half y'all ain't got nowhere to go. You ain't got no job. You never been nowhere before. You don't know what to do. Your clothes look raggedy. You got on flour sack pants. You ain't got no underwear on. You ain't got no money to buy no more shoes. You look like a vagabond. And if we catch you as a vagrant, we're going to lock your ass back up. So these poor white folks out of Europe were called serfs. And because they had such a rich history as agricultural laborers, they thought, ooh, let's send them over to America and work over there on the land. But America and Europe, they ain't got the same grass. We ain't got the same trees, the same snakes, the same ants, the same mosquitoes. It's a whole different goddamn ecosystem over here. Think about that for a second. And Europe don't really grow shit. There's no GDP out of Europe to this day. What does Europe produce? At that time, we had cotton later, but we had corn, tobacco, rice, fur trade was popping off. Europe wasn't exporting shit. In the island, they had molasses, they had sugar, they had rum, gold. So the fact that they came over to work in our land, we ain't never seen this shit before. 4 or 5 of those white slaves out in Virginia trying to knock down a tree. They done ran across a whole goddamn wasp nest and got stung. They have never been stung by an American wasp. They've never been bit by an American rattlesnake. They've never been bit by anything over here. They've never seen a black bear before because black bears are not in Europe. A fucking coyote, a fox, they've never seen them over there. Over here. First time coming here. Because we got TV, we know what it look like. But if I drop your ass off in the middle of Africa, you don't know half of the animals out there, other than the ones you saw on TV on Nat Geo. So imagine this large number of white folks coming to the Americas, not knowing anything about what's going on. It was a good idea, I think. But yeah, the book White Cargo. Thank you. White Cargo. Thank you. That's an excellent example. So I can only hope, family, that I was making a little bit of sense tonight. I can only hope I made a little bit of sense tonight. Seriously. I mean, I absolutely enjoy doing this, man. Seriously. I absolutely enjoy doing this. On a quick change of note, because I want to come back to y'all sometime this week. And we're going to do Bible study. I want to do Bible study next time. And it's just some stuff that I was coming across, man, about the throne and who's sitting on the throne. And oh, boy, it's a lot of juicy information. We're going to take our time and really go through a lot of this information, man, that I was studying last night. I'm going to put it all together in a nice PowerPoint for everybody. But yeah, we're going to deal with the throne of God next time, man. Thank y'all for tuning in. Thank y'all for tapping in, taking notes. Oh, for sure. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop at all. You know, I got my channel up and running now. Need you guys to support it. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Share this shit, man. I know y'all in those Facebook groups and shit, man. Copy the link and drop it in the Facebook group. I know you guys are on TikTok. Screen record this shit, man. Throw it up on TikTok for me, man. I need to get my followers up. You know, I'm dedicated to teaching. I'm not really on the numbers game. You know what I'm saying? It was like 40 of us rocking out tonight. It could have been 4 of us. I would have been teaching with the same fucking energy. You know what I'm saying? Those who know me know I started off that way. I started off in a room full of 5 people, and that shit grew to a whole crowd. I do this because I love teaching. Teaching is my gift. And if it's the will of Allah, I'm gonna keep teaching you guys, inshallah. And I'm gonna keep bringing the energy. I'm gonna keep bringing the energy to y'all, man. Y'all keep writing this shit down, man. Keep having those conversations at work, bro. Keep having those conversations in those chats. Keep having those conversations on TikTok and wherever you go, man. Keep having the conversations with your parents, your grandparents, your loved ones, your cousins, your kinfolks. Keep talking to them. Plant the seed, bro. Because that's really the only way this shit gonna switch up, man. If all of us are doing our part, and that's why I deem you all disciples, man. A disciple is one who learns directly from the teacher. You underdig that? So again, man, thank y'all for tapping in. Appreciate y'all so much for sharing the love, brothers and sisters. Hey, man, keep reading. Keep reading. Keep studying, y'all. I appreciate y'all, man, so much. When y'all see that live, but click the notification. If you hadn't already, click the damn notification. Okay? Because that's going to be important. That's the only way you're going to know when I pop up and go live, the notification goes off. If you don't notification, you won't know. Share this shit, y'all. Please share this shit. It's so much information, man, that I could probably do the same exact lecture for another 2 hours, and we can dig deeper. We can dig deeper. But the whole thing is to dispel the lies and get you guys to realize with your real eyes the real lies. Okay? And get you guys to release the ghost spell. You understand? So once again, man, thank y'all so much. Appreciate y'all for tapping in. M.O.I out.